Today's top story. The new St. Pete Pier opened in May. Among so many other cool things, it has a splash pad and an awesome playground for kids, and a big piece of art called Bending Art. Go check it out, but make sure you use social distance and wear a mask. Since 2009, the Burj Khalifa in the city Dubai has been the tallest building in the world at 2,722 feet tall. That's over half a mile. There are 3 other buildings around the world that are either being designed or being built that are even taller. In the 1930s, this is what new houses look like. Can you imagine what people must have thought when they first saw the famous architect Frank Lloyd Wright's Falling Water designed in 1935? Or Le Corbusier's famous Villa Savoye designed in 1929? People must have thought those houses were so exciting and new and different. Good morning and thank you for watching the Today Show. I'm your host, Elliot Green. Our first guest is my dad, Jason Green. He's an architect. Thanks for being on the show. I'm excited to have you.
Thank you so much for having me on the Today Show, Elliot. I'm so excited to be here.
What does an architect do? How do you design something?
So, architects design buildings and sometimes objects like furniture, but not really bridges. Engineers design bridges. The first thing an architect does after being asked to design a building by a client is to come up with 1 or 2 design concepts. This can be done by drawing a really simple sketch or making a really simple model out of cardboard or wood or plexiglass. After the architect works on one of those 2 designs for about a month, he or she will take the idea to the client. And the client is the person who's paying and will own the building once it's complete, and see which design the client likes best. When everyone agrees on the best design, the architect will go back and start working on a very detailed set of drawings called construction documents. These drawings used to be drawn by hand with pens, but now drawings are drawn on a computer program called AutoCAD. These construction documents usually have between 50 and hundreds of pages, depending on how big and hard the building will be to build. The drawings include a site plan, which is a drawing that shows where the building is supposed to be on the site. It's basically a drawing from the sky if you were a bird or in a drone. There are also floor plans, which show what the building looks like if you slice the building horizontally and took off the roof. This helps us understand how the rooms fit together. There are also sections, which show what the building looks like if you slice the building vertically and split the building in half. And there are detailed drawings, which show how the building goes together, how it's built.
What else helps design the building?
So there are lots of other people who help design buildings because there's so much information in the drawings, and the architects can't know and do everything. So the architect hires engineering consultants for each project. These engineers are people who are experts in one specific thing. For example, the architect hires a structural engineer to make sure that the building doesn't fall down. Structural engineers use a lot of stuff that they learned in college. A lot of math classes like calculus and geometry. They take physics and other classes where they learn about steel and concrete and earthquakes and wind to make sure that the building doesn't fall down. The architect also hires a civil engineer to make sure that the building is built on the exact spot that it needs to be and that all of the electricity and the water are able to come in and out of the building. The architect also hires what's called a mechanical, electrical, and plumbing engineer, that's one person, who makes sure that the building stays cool in the summer and hot in the winter, and that each room has enough electrical light and electrical outlets, and that all the bathrooms work properly. It can take 6 months to over a year to complete all of these drawings.
What happens next?
So after the drawing is complete, the architect works with the client or the owner to hire a building construction manager who is in charge of hiring other companies like carpenters, painters, plumbers, electricians, and window and door installers, and lots of others who actually build the building. The construction manager also is in charge of getting construction permits, which is basically permission from the government to construct the building. The construction can take a year or more, depending on how big or complex the building will be.
Do you get to be creative as an architect?
Architects do get to be very creative, but architecture students get to be the most creative and have the most fun because they don't have to work with clients whose ideas the architect won't always agree with. And remember, the client is the person who will own the building. They don't have to worry about how much it will cost to build the building. They don't even have to worry about whether or not the building can actually physically be built. Architecture students can be as creative as they want, and that is where the real fun is.
Is being an architect hard?
Architecture is hard because there's so much to know and remember to do. But it's a very fun kind of hard because you're always solving problems and being creative. And the greatest thing in the world is to work really hard on something. You draw every single little thing, you figure out every single little problem, and then 2 years later, there's your idea built right in front of you. It's a great, exciting feeling.
That sounds fun. How long have you been an architect?
So I graduated from the University of Florida with a Master of Architecture in 2002. I worked for a firm in Tampa after that, and then I taught architecture to college students for about 6 years. Now I work by myself.
How much do architects get paid?
So architects usually get paid between 5 and 15% of the total cost of the construction of the building. So if a building costs $10 million to build, the architect will get paid around $750,000. But remember, the architects also have to pay the engineering consultants, so the architect actually keeps much less.
What is your favorite building?
The buildings that I'm most proud of designing are probably some of the schools that I've worked on. Good architecture can help people to be more productive and get more work done, and there's nothing more important than learning. My favorite building designed by a famous architect is probably a building called Expo 2010, Danish Pavilion. It's by an architect named Bjarke Ingels, and I love how fun it is and how people can walk or even ride their bike on every surface, anywhere they want.
What kind of building materials are used to make a building? Are any materials better than others?
So there are so many materials that can be used to construct a building. Sometimes certain materials are better in certain climates. Like, you want to keep materials that insulate you and keep you warm in really cold places, or you want to keep cool in really hot places like St. Pete. Obviously, concrete and steel are the strongest, but they are also the most expensive, and clients don't always like to do what's the most expensive. So a lot of times, the architect, the client, and the construction manager need to compromise on the best material, the one that's still safe and strong for that specific job. The most popular materials used in construction include concrete, wood, glass, and steel. Some architects like to experiment with new materials like 3D printed plastic or even thick cardboard tubes.
Cardboard tubes are round. Are circles good for building?
Circles can be really good shapes for building for two reasons that I can think of off the top of my head. Number one, circles are good aerodynamic shapes, which means like a sports car, the wind will just curve around it. One challenging thing about round buildings is that they make it a little bit more difficult to lay out the rooms on the inside. Also, a lot of times columns, those are the poles that hold up the ceiling above you, are round because they're very good in compression, which means that when something is pushing down on something that's really heavy, it can withstand that weight.
What are the best places to build new buildings?
So good architecture is very powerful because it has the ability to make people's lives better. If you go to school in a beautiful building, it makes you really want to be there. It makes you want to work harder. It makes you want to work better and faster. If you live in a house that's safe with lots of fresh air and a lot of sunlight, you'll be a happier person and you'll have a better life. So to answer your question, the best place to build a new building is wherever it's most needed. That may mean new architecture is needed in an area that was badly damaged by a bad storm or an earthquake, or in underserved communities that just need some love and attention. By building the right buildings in the right places, architects can help solve some of those problems. Because everyone, no matter how young or old or rich or poor, deserves to live in a healthy, clean, and safe place.
I know you are an architect, and architects design buildings and not bridges, but what is the longest and tallest bridge ever built?
So the longest bridge in the world is the Danyang Kunshan Grand Bridge in China. It was built in 2010 and cost $8.5 billion. It's 102 miles long. The Sunshine Skyway Bridge in Tampa Bay is only 4 miles long. The tallest bridge in the world is the Beipanjiang Bridge, which is also in China. It's 1,850 feet high. The Empire State Building is 1,450 feet high at its highest point, which means that the bridge is 400 feet taller than the Empire State Building.
Wow. Do architects like to make other things?
Well, I can't speak for all architects, but I love making other things. Architects are designers, and designers love to create. And for me, whether it's a birthday invitation for you or your brother, or videos with you guys, or t-shirts or logos, I just love to create. It makes me so happy. So for all of you at Shorecrest who love to create and design stuff, maybe you should think about becoming an architect someday.
Thank you for answering all my questions. Coming up next, after the break, Rutledge Wood joins us to talk about his hit Netflix show, Floor is Lava, and Taylor Swift comes to perform her latest album. This is GBS